Commander, you cannot be seriously considering letting humans fight in this war. Those primitives will get us all killed. Prime Minister Zephyr slammed his fist on the crystalline table, glaring at the grizzled human across from him. John Jones, the seasoned human commander, sat ramrod straight in his chair. He locked eyes with Zephyr, not flinching. The Iridian homeworld's towering crystal spires glittered in the sun outside the large windows, contrasting with the heavy tension hanging in the air of the conference room. Representatives from a dozen alien races shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had gathered to discuss the dire situation with the Krix Empire. The insectoid species had already conquered and enslaved dozens of worlds. The Galactic Alliance was losing badly. Their fleets were in tatters, barely holding the line. Zephyr had proposed a bold plan to strike the heart of the Krix Empire, but the other alien leaders thought it was suicide. Trillions would die if they failed. That's when John spoke up and volunteered to lead the mission with his human task force. Jaws dropped around the room. The humans were the most junior members of the Alliance. Their technology was primitive compared to the others. They had a reputation for being unpredictable and reckless. "With all due respect, Prime Minister," John said in a level voice that still somehow conveyed his intensity, "my people have a saying. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and I'd say trillions of lives at stake counts as desperate." Zephyr's nostril slits flared. He opened his mouth to chastise the impudent human, but before he could speak, an urgent message blinked on the screen behind him. The Krix had just attacked a major Iridian colony. The Galactic Alliance fleet was too far away to respond in time. Millions would die. John shot to his feet. "My task force can be there in 2 hours to defend the colony. We'll buy you time to mobilize the fleet." Zephyr glared but conceded with a terse nod. "Very well, Commander, but the fate of the galaxy rests on your shoulders. Do not fail us." The human gave a grim smile as he exited the room. "That's what we humans do best, Minister. Pull victory from the jaws of defeat, against all odds. Watch and learn." The ISS Defiant dropped out of warp space, the besieged Iridian colony filling its view screens. A sprawling network of domed cities and underground bunkers spread out before them, under heavy assault from a massive Krix invasion fleet. Insectoid ships swarmed around the colony's defenses like locusts. "All hands to battle stations," John barked from the bridge. Klaxons blared and crew scrambled to their posts. "Launch all fighters. Bring us in hot and ready to engage." The human ships surged forward to meet the enemy head-on. What they lacked in size and advanced tech, they made up for with speed and maneuverability. Nimble human destroyers wove between the lumbering Krix battleships, pummeling them with precision strikes. Fighter squadrons danced around enemy screens, outflanking and disrupting their formations. John gripped the armrests of his command chair, eyes darting across tactical displays. He opened a comm channel. "Major Hawkins, status of ground forces." "First wave deployed and engaging, sir," Liam replied, shouting over the din of pulse rifles and explosions. "Iridian militia have linked up with our Marines. We're giving these bugs a hell of a fight in the colony streets." "Good man. We'll keep the heat off you from up here." John switched to the ship-to-ship channel. "All vessels concentrate fire on the enemy command ship. Draw them away from the colony, and see if you can lure them closer to the orbital defense platforms." Acknowledgements crackled over comms as the human ships pressed the attack. The Defiant shuddered under a barrage of plasma fire, but her shields held. John watched as the Krix command ship took the bait, surging forward to meet them, its escorts in tow. Licking his lips, John waited until the Krix ships were in optimal range. "Fire the ODPs! Hit them with everything we've got!" The orbital platforms, designed to repel invaders, unleashed a storm of missiles and rail cannon rounds. Krix ships crumpled and broke apart under the onslaught, scattering their formation. "Their lines are broken," John's XO crowed. "We've got them on the run." On the ground, Liam and his Marines advanced, street by blood-soaked street. The colony's narrow corridors became kill boxes as human ingenuity met Krix ferocity head-on. Liam fought his way to one of the Crix's grounded landing ships. Slapping demo charges on its hull, he and his squad sprinted for cover. The landing ship exploded in a plume of fire and shrapnel, killing scores of Crix warriors and destroying their foothold. Militia and Marines cheered as the invaders fell back in disarray. John allowed himself a tight smile as he watched the Crix fleet wobble and waver, but his grin faded when an urgent hail pinged on his personal comm. It was Prime Minister Zephyr. John stepped into the privacy of his ready room and took the call. "Commander Jones." Zephyr's normally imperious tone was tempered with grudging respect. "It seems I may have underestimated your species' combat prowess. The Iridian people are in your debt." "We're not out of the woods yet, Minister, but I appreciate the kind words." Zephyr hesitated. "I'm afraid I have grave news. Our intelligence has learned that the Crix have developed a new weapon, a planet killer, an energy cannon capable of cracking a world in half." John's blood ran cold. "My God, where is it? How do we stop it?" "It's being transported to the front by a heavily armed convoy. If it's deployed, I don't need to tell you the consequences. Countless billions will perish." Zephyr fixed John with a somber look. "You must intercept that convoy, Commander. At all costs, destroy the weapon before it can be used." "What about the colony, my people?" "The Alliance fleet is still mobilizing. Once they arrive, they can relieve you, but this takes priority. I know I'm asking for another miracle, but—" John squared his shoulders, jaw set with determination. "I understand, Minister. Consider it done." He strode back onto the bridge, his mind racing. Every instinct screamed not to leave his people behind. But if that planet killer reached its destination, it was game over. For everyone. "Major Hawkins," he called over the comm. "Change of plans." John strode onto the bridge of the sleek black frigate. His hand-picked strike team, the best of the best, was already at their stations. They had a critical mission: intercept the Crix convoy carrying the planet-killer weapon before it was too late. "Lieutenant Sarov, take us out," John ordered as he settled into the command chair. "Silent running, full stealth mode." "Aye, sir," the helmswoman replied, hands flying over her console. The frigate slipped its moorings and knifed into the void, vanishing from sensors. They pushed the engines hard, racing to the convoy's last known coordinates. Every second counted. Billions of lives hung in the balance. Suddenly, a proximity alert pinged. "Sir, picking up a distress beacon," Ensign Vickers called out from ops. "It's an Iridian refugee transport. Their engines are dead in space." John frowned. They couldn't afford delays, but he couldn't leave civilians to die either. "Drop cloak, change course to intercept. Let's render aid quickly." The frigate shimmered into view as it pulled alongside the battered transport. John led a team aboard to assess the situation. Dozens of weary Iridians huddled in the hold, their eyes hollow with despair. One of them, a young male, broke from the crowd. "Please, you must help us. The Crix destroyed our world. We barely escaped." "I'm sorry for your loss," John said. "We'll get you to safety. Do you need medical attention?" The Iridian shook his head. "I am Talon, a scientist. I have information you need. The Crix have built a weapon, a cannon that can shatter planets. I know how it works." John grabbed his shoulders. "I'm listening." Talon explained frantically. "The cannon is powered by Zeridium, an unstable isotope. If you sabotage the containment system, the weapon will be destroyed." An idea formed in John's mind. They needed every advantage against the Crix. "Come with us, Talon. Help us stop this weapon. We'll get your people to an Alliance world, I promise." Talon nodded grimly and joined the strike team on the frigate. They raced on more determined than ever. As they neared the convoy's location, the sensor officer cursed. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple Black Star Syndicate ships guarding the convoy. The Crix must have hired those mercenary scum as extra muscle." John gritted his teeth. Infiltrating the convoy just got harder, but he had a plan. "Vickers, rig our IFF to broadcast as a damaged Black Star ship. We'll limp in, pretend we need repairs. Once we're close enough, we'll board the transport and take it from within." The crew hurried to put the plan in motion. The frigate, now disguised, approached the convoy, spewing smoke and sparks. The Crick's Black Star forces took the bait, allowing them to dock.
Then all hell broke loose.
John, Talon, and the strike team burst onto the Crick's ship in a hail of blaster fire. Crick's warriors and Black Star mercenaries swarmed to meet them, turning the corridors into a vicious close-quarters melee. They fought their way to the cargo hold, leaving a trail of insectoid corpses. The doomsday cannon loomed before them, a monstrous construction of jagged metal and pulsing energy. Talon sprinted to the control panel and started inputting commands. "Cover me! This will take a few minutes." The team formed a perimeter, pouring fire into the Crick's reinforcements. John took point, his rifle bucking as he dropped target after target. A shadow fell over him. He spun to see a towering Crick's warrior, clad in heavy armor, barreling through his men. It was a monstrous specimen, genetically engineered for raw strength and savagery. John charged to meet the beast head-on. They clashed in a furious whirlwind of punches, kicks, and slashes. John was outmatched in size and strength, but he was faster. He ducked a crushing blow and raked his combat knife across the creature's throat. Ichor sprayed as it reeled back, gurgling. John pressed his advantage, slamming his rifle butt into its skull again and again until it collapsed. But the effort took its toll. John staggered, bleeding from a dozen wounds. His vision swam as he saw Talon typing furiously, almost done. With a triumphant shout, Talon stabbed the final key. Alarms blared as the containment field cracked and ruptured. The cannon started to shake itself apart. Move back to the ship," John roared, grabbing Talon and hauling him bodily towards the docking port. The team scrambled to follow, dodging explosions and falling debris. They barely made it aboard their frigate and detached before a massive shockwave slammed into them. The Crick's transport disintegrated in a blinding fireball, the planet killer consumed in its own catastrophic meltdown. Cheers erupted across the bridge as they limped away, their stealth systems fried. Hull breached in a dozen places. They had done it. Against all odds, they had saved countless lives. John sagged into his chair, exhausted and bleeding, but smiling. His comm pinged with an incoming message. It was Major Hawkins. "Sir, the colony is secure. We held the line. The Cricks are pulling back. Whatever you did up there, it worked." "Well done, Major," John said, pride swelling in his chest. "Knew I could count on you. We'll be limping home soon. We took a hell of a beating, but mission accomplished." He barely had time to process their victory when another urgent comm blinked on his console. A distress call from Valeria, an allied homeworld. His blood ran cold as he read the message. A new Crick's invasion force, twice the size of the one they just faced, was besieging the planet. And this time they had brought 2 planet-killer cannons. Valeria was on the brink of total destruction. John slumped back, his injuries forgotten as a new, even greater weight settled on his shoulders. Their fight was far from over. The Valerian homeworld hung in the void, a sapphire jewel of vast oceans dotted with gleaming floating cities. But now, those once pristine waters churned with debris and blood. Zorgax the Unmaker, a ruthless Crick's warlord, known for his cruelty and tactical brilliance, had launched a devastating attack on the planet. At the heart of the assault was Zorgax's new bioweapon, a genetically engineered virus that could adapt to target specific species. The peaceful Valerians, masters of bioengineering in their own right, found themselves particularly vulnerable to this insidious threat. Aboard the sleek Iridian stealth cruiser, John gritted his teeth against the pain of his injuries as he studied the tactical displays. Zephyr's medics had done their best to patch him up, but he knew he was far from peak condition. It didn't matter. He had a job to do. "Talon, tell me you've got something," John called out, his voice strained. The Iridian scientist hunched over his workstation, deep in concentration. "I'm analyzing the data we gathered on the Crick's bioweapon," Talon replied, his fingers flying over the controls. "It's highly sophisticated, a nanovirus that can mutate and evolve at an unprecedented rate." John frowned. "Can we stop it?" Talon hesitated. "Possibly. I believe the key is to fight fire with fire. We need to develop a specialized nanobot swarm, one that can hunt down and neutralize the virus on a microscopic level. Then that's what we'll do, John said firmly. He turned to the view screen where the Valerian homeworld grew larger by the second. What he saw made his heart sink. The floating cities, once marvels of bioengineering and art, were crumbling and decaying. Millions of Valerians thrashed in the polluted waters, their bodies ravaged by the Crix virus. The once vibrant coral reefs were now sickly and pale, choked with the dead. "Oh my God," whispered Sergeant Adam Malek, John's right hand. "We're too late." "No," John said, his jaw tight. "We can still save them, but not through conventional means. This is beyond a simple battle now." He opened a comm channel to the Valerian resistance leader, a brilliant bioengineer named Calyx. The Valerian's face appeared on the screen, his luminous eyes filled with pain and desperation. "Commander Jones," Calyx said, his musical voice strained, "please tell me you have a plan. My people are dying." John leaned forward. "We do, but we need your help. One of my scientists, Talon, has an idea to counter the Crix bioweapon, a nanobot swarm that can neutralize the virus. Can you work with him to develop it?" Calyx's fins flared with hope. "Yes, of course. My team and I will do whatever it takes." John nodded. "Good. Because we'll need to deploy it on a massive scale to save your world, and to do that we need time." He brought up a holographic display of Zorgax's flagship, a monstrous dreadnought bristling with weapons. "My team and I will lead an attack on Zorgax's fleet, a diversion to draw their attention away from the planet. That should give you and Talon a window to distribute the nanobot swarm." Calyx bowed his head. "We will not waste this chance, Commander. Thank you." As the comm channel closed, John turned to his crew. "You heard the plan. Let's get to it. We've got a world to save." The bridge buzzed with activity as the humans prepared for battle. Engineers fine-tuned the ship's stealth systems, while the pilots plotted attack vectors. In the medical bay, doctors applied stimulants and pain suppressors to John's battered body, keeping him on his feet. Hudda stepped up beside him, her dark eyes concerned. "Are you sure about this, sir? You're in no condition for a fight." John met her gaze. "I don't have a choice, Sergeant. This is our only shot, and I'll be damned if I sit it out." She nodded slowly. "Understood, sir. We've got your back." As they approached the Crix fleet, John felt a strange calm settle over him. This was it, the moment of truth. Everything they'd fought for, all the sacrifices they'd made. It all came down to this. He thought of all the lives hanging in the balance, the Valerians choking on their own blood, the countless worlds that would fall if Zorgax wasn't stopped, his own crew, battered but unbowed, ready to lay down their lives for the cause. Failure was not an option. "Engage the fleet," he ordered, his voice like steel. "Buy Talon and Calyx the time they need, no matter the cost." The human ship shimmered and vanished as its stealth field engaged. It slipped past the Crix picket lines, silent and deadly, a ghost in the void. Then, at John's signal, it struck. Missiles and plasma fire erupted from the ship's forward batteries, slamming into the Crix formation. The insectoid ships reeled, caught off guard by the sudden onslaught. Alarms blared as the Crix returned fire, their weapons stitching lines of destruction through space. The human cruiser weaved and dodged, its superior agility letting it evade the worst of the barrage. But it couldn't evade everything. The ship shuddered as a plasma bolt slammed into its flank, alarms screaming. Damage reports flooded in, each more dire than the last. "Shields down to 20%, shouted the tactical officer. "Hull breach on deck 7. John held onto his command chair as the ship bucked and heaved. "Reroute power to compensate. Keep firing." On the view screen, Zorgax's flagship loomed, a monster among monsters. Its gargantuan weapon arrays glowed with baleful energy as it lumbered towards them. John bared his teeth in a feral grin. "Bring us in close. We'll take that bastard head-on." The bridge crew obeyed without hesitation, even as the ship shook itself apart around them. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks, and the stench of smoke and blood filled the air. But still they fought on, hurling themselves against the Cricks with reckless abandon. They were buying time with their lives, and they all knew it. In the heart of the Valerian floating city, Talon and Calyx worked feverishly to create their nanobot countervirus. Dozens of Valerian scientists joined them, pooling their knowledge and resources in a desperate race against time. Slowly, painfully, they made progress. The first generation of nanobots took form, microscopic warriors ready to do battle with Zorgax's plague. But would it be enough? And would it be in time? Those questions haunted John as he watched the Crick's flagship fill his screen. His ship was coming apart, its weapons spent, its crew battered and bloody. This was their final charge, their last roll of the dice. "Ramming speed," he ordered, his voice calm. "Aim for their primary reactor." His crew obeyed without question, even as the fear shone in their eyes. They knew this was a one-way trip, but if it gave Talon and Calyx the time they needed, it would be worth it. The Crick's ship loomed larger, its hull plating coming into sharp focus. John could see the pitted scars of old battles, the strange alien runes that covered its surface. Then, with a bone-jarring impact, they struck. The human cruiser crumpled like tin foil as it ploughed into the Crick's ship, its reactor overloading in a blinding flash of light. John was thrown from his chair, his world spinning. Emergency bulkheads slammed down around him, barely holding back the rush of escaping atmosphere. Alarms shrieked, and emergency lighting painted everything in hellish red. Through blurred eyes, John saw figures moving on the bridge. Not his crew, but Crick's warriors, storming the CIC through the gaping holes in the hull. At their head strode a monstrous figure, clad in Baroque armor, its chitin plates adorned with grisly trophies. Zorgax the Unmaker, come to finish the job personally. John struggled to his feet, his body screaming in protest. He snatched up a fallen plasma rifle and leveled it at the warlord, his finger tight on the trigger. "You want me, you son of a bitch," he snarled, blood flecking his lips. "Come and get me." Zorgax chittered in cruel laughter, the sound like nails on a chalkboard. "Pathetic human, you think you can stand against me? I, who have brought entire worlds to their knees?" The warlord drew a wicked-looking glaive, its edges shimmering with monomolecular sharpness. "I will feast on your entrails and mount your head on my trophy wall. Your species will be nothing more than a footnote in the glorious saga of the Cricks." John answered with a burst of plasma fire, the bolt stitching across Zorgax's armor. The warlord staggered but did not fall, his carapace smoking but intact. With a roar of fury, Zorgax charged, glaive whirling. John ducked and rolled, feeling the rush of displaced air as the blade cleaved through the space he'd just occupied. He came up firing, his rifle barking until its power cell ran dry. Zorgax weathered the storm, his armor pitted and scarred but still holding. John tossed aside the spent rifle and drew his combat knife, the blade seeming pitiful against Zorgax's bulk. But he had no choice. He had to buy time, even if it cost him his life. The warlord lunged, glaive stabbing. John parried desperately, feeling the impact all the way up his arm. He danced back, looking for an opening, a weakness to exploit. There, a hairline fracture in Zorgax's armor just below the neck joint, if he could get a blade in there. John feinted left, then dove right. Zorgax turned to follow, but too slow. John's knife found the gap and plunged deep, the mono-edged blade sinking to the hilt in the warlord's flesh. Zorgax screamed, a high, ululating cry of agony. He lashed out with his glaive, catching John in the side. The human felt ribs crack, felt the hot rush of blood. But he held on, twisting the knife savagely. Zorgax thrashed and bucked, trying to dislodge him. But John clung like a limpet, pouring all his strength into the blow. With a wet tearing sound, the knife found something vital. Zorgax spasmed, ichor gushing from the wound. He toppled, his massive bulk crashing to the deck. John fell with him, the knife slipping from his grasp. He rolled away, gasping, clutching at his shattered ribs. Through pain-blurred eyes he saw Zorgax twitch and lay still, a spreading pool of dark blood haloing his head. "Choke on that, you bastard," John hissed. Then the pain took him and the world went black. He awoke to the gentle beep of a heart monitor and the soft rustle of medical equipment. He was lying in a bed, his wounds dressed and bandaged. At his side sat a familiar figure, concern etched on his alien features. "Kylix," John croaked, his throat raw. The Valyrian nodded, his luminous eyes shining. "You did it, Commander. You bought us the time we needed. Talon and I were able to deploy the nanobot swarm. It worked. The Crix virus is being neutralized as we speak." John struggled to sit up, wincing at the bolt of pain in his side. "My crew?" Kylix's fins drooped. "Heavy casualties, but many survived thanks to your actions. You saved not just my world, but countless others. The Crix are in full retreat. Without Zorgax to lead them, they're falling into disarray." John closed his eyes, tears leaking from under the lids. It had worked. Against all odds, against all hope, they had won. But the cost, God, the cost had been so high. "There's someone here to see you," Kylix said softly. "She's been waiting for you to wake up." John turned his head to see Ada standing in the doorway, her arm in a sling and her face bruised but smiling. "You look like hell, sir," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Feel like it too," John replied, managing a weak grin. "Guess this means I'm on bed rest for a while." "And don't even think about disobeying doctor's orders," came another voice. Talon stepped into the room, looking haggard but triumphant. "You've earned a rest, Commander. We all have." John looked at these three, the human, the Iridian, the Valyrian, all united in purpose and sacrifice. In that moment, he felt a swell of pride, of hope for the future. They had won this battle. But the war was far from over. The Crix would be back, and there would be new threats on the horizon. But as long as beings like these stood together, as long as there were those willing to fight and die for what was right, then there was still hope, and that, in the end, was what mattered most. John's vision swam as he staggered to his feet, blood dripping from his wounds. The bridge of the Crix flagship was a smoking ruin, consoles sparking and bodies littering the deck, and there, looming over it all, was Zorgax. The Crix warlord was a nightmare made flesh, his carapace scored with scars, and his eyes glinting with malevolent intelligence. He advanced on John, his glaive held low and ready. "You fight well for a human," Zorgax chittered, his mandibles clicking, "but you are merely delaying the inevitable." John spat blood, raising his fists. "As long as I'm still breathing, you haven't won." They clashed in a whirlwind of steel and chitin. John's augmented strength pitted against Zorgax's monstrous power. The human ducked and weaved, landing blows that would have shattered concrete, but Zorgax shrugged them off like raindrops. The warlord's glaive darted out, its monomolecular edge slicing through John's armor like paper. He gritted his teeth against the pain, refusing to give ground. He had to hold on, had to buy time for Talon and Kylix to deploy the nanobot swarm. Zorgax sensed his desperation and laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "You think your little countermeasure will save you? The attack on the Valyrians was merely a test, a prelude to the real assault." "What are you talking about?" John demanded, circling warily. "So even now a fleet of my stealth ships is en route to the heart of your precious alliance. Each one carries a payload of the bioweapon, ready to unleash it upon billions. Within days, your core worlds will be nothing but graveyards." John's blood ran cold. He keyed his comm, shouting over the din of battle. "Ada, Talon, everyone, you have to get out of here. Zorgax has ships headed for the Alliance capitals. You need to warn them." "Sir, we're not leaving you." Ada's voice crackled with static and emotion. "That's an order, Sergeant," John roared. "Go now, I'll keep Zorgax busy." There was a pause, then a whispered, "Aye, sir." The comm went dead. John turned back to Zorgax, a grim smile on his lips. "Looks like it's just you and me, ugly." "You fool," Zorgax snarled. "You've sacrificed yourself for nothing. The Alliance will burn and your death will be meaningless." "We'll see about that." John charged, a wordless cry on his lips. He ducked under Zorgax's glaive and tackled the warlord around the waist, driving him back. His hand scrabbled at his belt, finding the override key for the ship's reactor. Zorgax's eyes widened as he saw the key. "What are you doing?" "Taking you with me," John grunted. He slammed the key into the console, twisting it savagely. Alarms blared and the deck bucked as the reactor began to overload. Zorgax roared in fury, smashing John aside. The human flew across the bridge and crashed into a sparking console, his vision going grey at the edges. Through the haze of pain, he saw Zorgax looming over him, glaive raised for the killing blow. But then the ship shuddered again, more violently this time. The warlord staggered, his strike going wide. John rolled aside, gasping for breath. He hauled himself upright, leaning heavily on the ruined console. On the view screen, he could see escape pods jettisoning from the ship, his team getting to safety, and beyond them, the shining cities of the Valerians, no longer shrouded in decay. Talon and Calyx had done it. The nanobots were working. Zorgax saw it too and howled in rage. "You've ruined everything." "That's what we humans do best," John said, blood on his teeth. "Fuck up your plans." The warlord lunged, but too slow. The reactor reached critical mass and detonated, consuming the flagship in a blinding flash of light. The last thing John saw was Zorgax's hate-filled eyes before the world dissolved into fire. Miles below on the surface of the Valerian homeworld, Ada and the rest of the strike team watched in horror as the Krix flagship exploded. They knew instantly what John had done, what he had sacrificed. Talon bowed his head, mourning the loss of a friend and ally, but there was no time for grief, not with Zorgax's final plan in motion. He turned to the others, his eyes hard. "We have to get this data back to the Alliance. They need to know what's coming." Gerda nodded, her jaw set. "The commander bought us a chance. We won't waste it." As the team prepared for the long journey back, Calyx and his Valerian warriors continued the fight, driving the remaining Krix from their cities. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. Light years away, Prime Minister Zephyr received the news of John's sacrifice and Zorgax's scheme with a heavy heart. The hero of the Iridian colony, the man who had single-handedly saved the Valerians, gone in a flash of fire and fury. But as he looked out over the gleaming spires of the Alliance capital, Zephyr felt a new resolve settle over him. The humans had proven themselves time and again. They were no longer the primitive newcomers, but equals, partners in the fight against the darkness. "We will honor Commander John Jones," Zephyr vowed, "and we will finish what he started. The Krix will pay for what they've done." He turned to his advisors, eyes hard. "Get me aligned to Earth. It's time we brought them fully into the fold. Together we will hunt down those stealth ships and end this threat, once and for all." The advisors hurried to obey, and Zephyr allowed himself a small, grim smile. The Alliance would mourn John, but they would also celebrate him, and they would never forget. For he had shown them the true strength of humanity, the indomitable will that burned in every human heart. And with that strength at their side, the Alliance would face the trials ahead, united and unafraid. The battle was over. The war continued. But John's legacy would live on, a shining beacon in the darkness, guiding them all to victory. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.